Music Tutor. I am your tutor, Harry, and today this one's a lot of talking, not a lot of play. Well, no play. And what I want to talk about is the 10 things that I feel make a better musician. Granted, a lot of this stuff has to do with tonal instruments, since that's where I work from. But I'm sure even if you are a atonal percussion instrumentalist, this will help you. What do I mean by making you a better musician? Well, inherently, not by any fault of our own, we will hit roadblocks and we'll plateau, and we'll feel like, well, I guess this is as good as I'm going to get, and that is usually not the case. I will tell you from my personal experience, I thought I was as good as I could ever get last year, and I started developing these processes that I'm about to tell you, and my musicianship has greatly benefited, I guess would be the best way to put it. I mean, there's no real quantitative value to how good of a musician you are, or how good at music you are. I mean, maybe Adam Neely will disagree with me on this one, but I don't know. I'm not going to ask him. So, 10 things that will immediately improve your musicianship. And this is the one that's really not for percussionists, even though it really should be. They should know this as well. It helps them communicate better with the band in general, with the rest of the group that they're playing with. And that is to learn the major scale. Now, this is something that's been pressed into me by Scott Devine over at Scott's Bass Lessons. And each one of these, I am going to mention what instructor had really impressed me with this phase of my education, or my improvement of my musicianship. I think credit should go where credit is due, right? So learning the major scale, and learning the major scale all over your instrument. I don't know horns, so I don't know how that actually formulates there, but as far as stringed instruments are concerned, piano is concerned, learn that major scale. That if you know the major scale everywhere on your instrument through all 12 keys, then you will inadvertently know every other mode of the major scale just by starting it from a different interval. Do you need to know a whole page worth of theory or a whole book's worth of theory? Not necessarily. There are many musicians who we consider the greatest musicians that have ever lived that don't know spit about theory. Theory doesn't really describe much in the terms of contemporary music, other than giving us enough language to muddle our way through it. But there are so many exceptions to traditional theory in contemporary music, because theory wasn't built for contemporary music, and no one really bothered to evolve theory to include contemporary music in total. Number 9, be comfortable with the sound of silence. Now, a lot of tutors or instructors or mentors that I have in musicianship have stated this, all right? But the one that really made it stick was a recent seminar I did with Michael Lee from Snarky Puppy. It's a true fact. I mean, I've been hearing about, be comfortable with the sound of silence, but I wasn't putting that into practice until almost this year. Yeah, you have to be, because sometimes a song doesn't need you to consistently play. You don't need to constantly add music to music. Sometimes just stepping back and letting the other musicians shine is enough. Just hitting that line that grooves and then stops for the rest of the bar. You could just play 3 notes a bar and rest out the rest of it. Maybe occasionally throw a fill in, but you don't have to fill every bar. Rests exist for a reason, you know? So being comfortable with the sound of silence, practice with silence, so this way you get comfortable with it, because it's as much an important part of your playing as hitting all of those notes. You know, there's a saying, you know, there's as much of a voice in the things that you don't say as there is in the things that you say. And there you go. I don't know who said it first, I don't know where it came from, but it's a good saying. Number 8, play slow to get fast. And almost every single tutor had said this too, but the one that really made it stick for me was Ariane Cap. Speaking of which, if you are into written music education, she just released a book. I would suggest highly going to Ari's Space blog and checking it out. But the problem with playing fast is that your technique falls apart, and if your technique falls apart, you're not really playing competently fast, you're making mistakes. So you really have to play slow to commit the muscle memory in order to get to the point where you can play fast. Because you don't want to play fast sloppy, you want to play fast competently. You can immediately just, that's great, but is it reliable? Is it competent? Is it stable? If it's not, then you have to slow it down and you have to start it over again. I can't tell you how many times when I'm doing a transcription, I'm learning a piece of music, and I'm sitting there and I'm playing it rubato. Rubato means without a metronome. And the reality is playing it rubato gets the muscle memory down. And then when I start introducing the metronome and bringing up the pace, I already have the muscle memory in place, so I can play it. I know I can play it. And now it's just a matter of bringing everything up to speed, and I do that slowly, gently, in order to maintain perfect technique, or as close to perfect technique as I can get. So that's number 8. Play slow to get fast. Number 7, and I can't stress enough how much this was a block for me for a very long time. Record yourself and play live. And this comes from Danny Mo Morris. Danny Mo is an instructor over at Berkeley School of Music, and basically you can't really critique yourself unless you listen to yourself. So you have to have one of these things and take a look at your hand technique. You have to have a mic, or you have to have a audio interface, and listen to how it sounds. Listen to the fret buzz, and try and figure out where the holes in your technique are, where you can improve, what you're forgetting, what you're missing out of your performance. You can't do that without recording yourself, and you can't really get comfortable playing live or playing with musicians unless you're playing live or playing with musicians. You can play the recordings till the cows come home, and there are plenty of people who record from track professionally, and that's completely acceptable. But if your intention is to create music on stage, you should probably get comfortable with the chaos that is other band members, and you should get comfortable with the chaos that is playing in front of people. It's a different experience entirely. Number 6, practice musically. And again, this is something that he is not the only one who has said this, but Damian Erskine really drives this home for me, because he will take things like a major scale, the plain major scale, and he will make it sound like music, ascension, descension, by using rhythm techniques, by using repetition, articulations. You know, when you're practicing that major scale that I told you all the way back at 10, practice it musically. Make it sound like music. Remember, the reason why you're going through all of this work to become a better musician is to create music. So if you're practicing things and it's all intellectual and dry and dun 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 dun. I'm sorry, but eventually, how are you going to transfer that into music? Better to start with rhythmical exercises that you incorporate into your scale learning, incorporate into your broken interval learning, incorporate into your arpeggiations of the scales, right? You want to practice pentatonics? Do it musically. Make it into a groove, and then practice it, and then move it around your fretboard or your horned instrument. But practice musically. Making music as much part of your practice as learning basic technique, because the end goal is to make music. So why wait? You know. Number 5. We're halfway there. Yay! Now, I am notorious for saying I don't really like learning other people's music. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like learning other people's lines, licks from other people. I just don't feel that there's much utility in learning an entire song from somebody when I find like one or two things interesting about it, especially when my goal is not to play in a cover band. Now, there's nothing wrong with playing in a cover band. Absolutely, if that's your deal, do it. But since I don't play in a cover band and I have no intentions of playing in a cover band, the level of transcription that I really engage in isn't so much learning entire songs, but learning parts of songs, learning licks of songs that I really like, that I want to be able to bring into my own vocabulary. Transcription is the best method for generating your own vocabulary. I tried for a year just to generate vocabulary, and just doesn't work the same. So getting lines from other people is absolutely key to really increasing your vocabulary, because there's only so many combinations of notes that you can do. It's almost guaranteed that someone has already created a bass line or a guitar lick with those notes, maybe not with the same rhythm, maybe not at the same tempo, but it's probably out there. And if you continue to listen to music and you continue to transcribe those things that you find interesting, that will become part of your vocabulary, become part of what you can call on when you're playing live, when you're improvising. And this comes from Steve Lawson, solo bass Steve. He is an amazing bass soloist, and just so you know, everyone in the list is going to be a bassist, so sorry. It's where I get most of my music education from, because that's my main instrument. Steve has a method, so to speak, that he uses, and transcription is the first part of it. Imitate. It's really catchy because everything ends the same, so it's sort of like reverse alliteration. It goes imitate, assimilate, integrate, and innovate. And that's going to piggyback onto number 4, but well, I'll just explain it. Imitate is transcribing, learning those things that you find interesting in other people's music for whatever reason. Assimilate is to make it so that you can play it. Like, your fingering is not going to be necessarily the same as Jocko's fingering or Victor Wooten's fingering. Your method of strumming isn't going to be the same. You want to assimilate it to a way that you're comfortable with playing. And then, as you're working with it, you'll integrate it into your playing, and the final stage of that, making it your own, innovating it, taking it and changing it into something that you would say, despite the fact that you learned the lick from, you picked up a Jocko lick, or you picked up a Steve Vai lick, or a lick from some dude who plays piano, I don't know. And you, when you get to the end of this process, there'll be pieces of that lick in what you recognize as your own vocabulary derived from that lick, but it will not be a carbon copy. You will not be Jocko on bass. You will not be Steve Vai or Carlos Santana on guitar. You won't be those people. You can't. You're not them. But you can be you. You can be authentically you, and you can still stand on the shoulders of those who came before you by learning their licks, the things that you found interesting that they had to say with their instruments, and then transforming it with your own voice. It's not really plagiarism when you go, well, I heard this, and this is how I interpret it into my own vocabulary. That's what you're supposed to do. That's not plagiarism. And number 4, now I said number 5, number 4 had a piggyback onto it, that assimilate and integrate is part of this, and that's repetition, 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 repetition. And I get this from Todd Johnson. Todd Johnson's a great blues jazz musician, bassist, and his contribution to this list really is that you need to play these things that you transcribe for a very long time, in order to really get them to the point where you're assimilating and integrating them into your playing. You will not find them erupting from an improv session or impromptu solo that you're doing unless you've been playing them. You know, you learn them and then you play them every practice. You know, most things, if you're really looking to integrate something into your vocabulary, you really want to work on like 1 or 2 projects for that at a time. So you're looking at taking 4 to 8 minutes out of your practice, if that, if you're playing like a large chunk of music. If you're not, if you're just playing like this real quick like 4-bar lick, how much does that take to really play that every day in order to integrate that into your playing? Not long, right? So we can really benefit from playing these things over and over again, repetition, getting them into your core memory, you know, and then your body just calls on it when the situation arises. So there's that repetition. Number 3, and this came from Scott, and I refined it to a degree that I think I'm comfortable with right now. Journaling. Now, initially, when I started my going back to bass journey last year, well, technically year before last, but when I'd signed up to the Academy, Scott's Bass Lessons, one of the things he harped on was journaling your practice, and he had a little notebook, a little like pad, like a scratch pad, and he just write down certain things that he was working on in little shorthand, his own personal shorthand, and there was that. And with Scott's Bass Lessons, there's a forum where we're encouraged to put our practice logs so that we can keep ourselves accountable, which is the real purpose of a log. Not only to see your progress, but to be accountable for what you're doing. But typing all of the things I was doing, especially when we were in quarantine and I was off work, so I was practicing 6 to 8 hours a day. Those posts got really, really long. And to be completely fair, I never really check them because, well, I have to go on Scott's, and I got to sign in, and then I got to go find my practice log, then I got to go all the way to the beginning, and then I got to figure out where I want to start reading from and see, where I was, and it's just not conducive to checking up on myself, keeping myself accountable to the practice schedule, improving my musicianship. So I turned to this bad boy, and also when writing became too cumbersome, especially when I went back to work, I went to video logging, and it's the same thing. It's still sitting in the same place. I just barely ever look at them, if I look at them at all. So I turned to this, and this I can open up, and look, there's my notes, there's my practice log. It's all there, and it's all accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. If the power goes out and I have a candle, I can look at it. So journal, definitely journal. Keep track of how you feel you're progressing with it, and what things you really need to fine-tune about your musicianship, about your playing, about holes in your knowledge. When you discover that you don't know something, make sure that you write it down. It will cement that in your memory that you need to really work on learning that one thing. Number two, we're almost there. Number two, actually fucking practice. Sitting there with your instrument in your hand and bullshitting on your phone is not practice. Sitting there saying, I really should practice, is not practice. Actually practice. Now, I'm all for practicing without intention. I'm all for you sitting there and you're doing fingering exercises and it's mind-numbing, and you don't really need to pay attention to yourself to make sure that you're doing these things properly. Okay, cool. Do some mindless tasks that doesn't require your hands, and but keep an ear out, just in case you hear a buzz or you hear something that doesn't sound right, so that you know to look at it and check it out. A good practice schedule always includes a warm-up. Always 5 minutes to get your hands in shape. If you're a vocalist, you know this. This is part of maintaining your instrument, which is your own voice, your literal throat. But as far as drummers, piano players, guitarists, bassists, people who play the oboe, play woodwind instruments, you have to warm up, because if you don't, you're never going to actually be your best during the practice, and you want to try to push yourself forward with your practice. You don't want to have like a breakthrough in the middle of a set while you're playing live. You want to have your breakthroughs in your practice. You want to be like, wow, I really did that. And the only way to do that is to not warm up during the practice session. So 5 minutes, not that much time out of your practice session. Warm up. Do yourself a favor. It also will save you pain. The vocalists all know this, and that's the reality of it. If you don't warm your instrument up, the way you operate your instrument, you will never be your best. The other part of this, now that we've gotten the practice part done, you really need to, and I get this from Phil Mann, by the way, the Grammy-nominated Phil Mann. Give yourself homework. When you learn things, make it a challenge. When you learn something, make it a challenge that you need to learn it in all 12 keys. That you don't have. You're not painting yourself in a corner of, okay, well, I learned this in the key of C. Now, okay, well, we're playing the song in the key of G. Well, now I can't really use this piece of vocabulary I have because I only know it in C. What Phil does bring up is give yourself that as homework. To hold yourself accountable and assign yourself that. That's the Phil Mann additive to that. Make sure you're practicing. You give yourself homework so that you can really make sure you're practicing and you give yourself homework so that you can push forward your playing to the next level. And before we get to number one, if you like this type of content, if you are looking for help with your musicianship, you can always find my videos here. I also provide some handouts, backing tracks, other type of resources over at my website, myilmt.com, myilmt.com. And if you need like a babysitter, I guess, if you need someone who's going to help you with step number 2, making sure that you practice and making sure that you giving you homework to make sure that you have something to progress for, forcing you to create videos so that you can get feedback on your playing. You can always go on to myilmt.com and go to the option for one-on-one session. The first one's a free session where we discuss what you are really looking to get out of a one-on-one. So feel free to reach out if you want to look at this face for an hour. If you do like this content, if you think this is helpful, you could always shoot me a comment down below. You can give this video a like. You can sub to my channel. I'd greatly appreciate that. If you're into it, there's a little bell thing with the notifications down there, I think, and all that jazz. So, number one, and this comes from everybody who plays an instrument, whether they are a superstar or they're just playing, busking out on the street. They're going to tell you, have fun. You're supposed to enjoy this, and if you don't, then why are you doing it? The turnaround rate for musicians to become famous is abysmal. The amount of musicians who have to work a day job just to survive that's the norm. So if you don't really enjoy it, if you're not having fun with it, might I suggest something else? I would suggest a different artistic outlet for a hobby if this is really causing you a lot of stress. You have to have fun. You have to enjoy what you're doing. When you practice, make games out of your practice exercises, so that this way it keeps you engaged in what you're doing. Because if you're not having fun, if you're sitting there and you're just, this is my major scale, this is my major scale, and you feel bored and you feel tired and you feel exhausted and you don't want to do it, then why are you doing it? You know, you don't have to do it. There's no one standing there saying if you don't practice an hour a day, you're a failure at life. I mean, if you're not having fun making music, then why are you making music? It's the same with any artistic outlet. I mean, if you look at your superstars, look at your great musicians throughout time, look at them on stage. They're having the time of their fucking lives. They're not like, oh. I mean, they had to practice hours. Cliff Burton practiced 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, to get to where he was. I mean, you don't do that if you don't enjoy it. You don't do that if you don't love it. I mean, maybe you do this because you need a hobby, and that's cool. But if the hobby isn't fun, then why are you doing it? You know, it's the same thing. Like, you know, if it causes you this much stress, this much agony, this much of anything, isn't it time that you evaluate whether or not that's actually a relaxing thing that you like to do? I mean, I sit here and I passively play my bass. I will, while I'm thinking about things, just pick the bass up and start strumming it because it's something I enjoy doing, something I do to de-stress from the day. And it's something I look forward to doing every day. Even my rest day. My rest day is just a day where I don't plan on playing bass. I just play. You know, I'll just pick it up, plug it in, and go, oh, let's just kick around with this. There you go. 10 things that will instantly make you a better musician. Again, like I said, if you like this content, like, comment, sub, notifications if you're into that thing. This has been Harry Felker, Indie Learning Music Tutor, and I'm 100% all about bringing you along on a musical journey to become the musician that you want to be.